Beyond Reason Radio.
So there is a new hot-selling NBA jersey in the country right now. And guess what? That player, that jersey, is for an Orlando Magic player.
Isn't that wonderful?
Sometimes I wonder if he listens to this show. Because, you know, if you listen to what he says, it sounds a lot like something I would say.
Yeah,
I just want to point that out.
Well, you ought to get him on as a guest.
That would be awesome. I have a feeling that's probably not going to happen, but that would be awesome. You're the producer. Get on that, Tom.
Oh, okay.
Now, I do wish, there's a part of me that wishes he had a top-selling jersey right now because he and the Magic were just about to go to the NBA Finals or something. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, that's not why, but the reason why is good, and we're going to get into that. But NBA jersey sales for Jonathan Isaac of the Orlando Magic surged 2 days after he declined to kneel for the national anthem.
Wow.
And I'm not surprised because I put up on my Facebook that he refused to kneel and why and everything. And immediately people were commenting and saying, I want to buy that jersey. Where can I find that jersey?
Wow.
So that's just anecdotal evidence. Mm-hmm. But if that's coming immediately on my Facebook, I could just imagine nationwide.
Sure.
Because there are people out there desperate to support somebody like this. There's such a barrage right now from the other side of this issue in sports, in Hollywood, and everything, that even some semblance of common sense on this issue from someone in that world, people are desperate for it.
And he wouldn't kneel because of?
Well, he says let's see. I'm going to get into it.
Okay.
Because it's a long explanation, but basically it has to do with his faith.
Mm-hmm.
It goes, he believes that the true answer to the country's problems right now is the gospel. Is the gospel of Jesus Christ. And he was very, very strong on this. Mm-hmm. I'm actually going to play the audio of him saying that a little bit later. But yeah, he was the only player to stand for the national anthem before the Magic's Friday game against the Brooklyn Nets.
I saw the pictures. Yeah.
Yeah, powerful.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't wear the T-shirt that said Black Lives Matter.
Correct.
And he didn't kneel. He decided to stand. It takes guts. I mean, everyone kind of makes it seem like kneeling takes guts. No, that's the popular thing
right,
to do now.
Now it's going along with the crowd.
To continue standing as a black man, he's black, to continue standing and then ask why, and to push the gospel of Jesus Christ as your reason, that really takes guts. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I am your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. We're on until 8 p.m. tonight, once again, here on News Radio WFLA Orlando. If you missed any of the show, make sure to catch the podcast on the iHeartRadio app. We're on Facebook Live as well. I want to talk a little bit, several different topics I want to get into. I want to talk about why politics dominates everything in American life. Because it really does nowadays. It just dominates everything. And it's funny to me because I've seen this change a lot just in the past 5 to 10 years. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You know, when I first got into politics, none of my friends were into politics. I was the unusual one to be listening to talk radio.
You still are.
For other reasons, though.
Oh, okay.
But, you know, no young people that I really knew were into it.
Yeah,
now it's everywhere, all over the place. Yeah. So I want to talk about that. We have to also discuss, what does Trump need to do to win in November? What does he need to do to win? I know a lot of people listening just kind of think it's a foregone conclusion that he's going to win. That is a dangerous way to think. You don't want to be arrogant. And I want to discuss what I believe. What do I know? I'm just a radio host. Barely one at that. But what do I believe he needs to do to win? And there are more calls for a shutdown. Yes, another shutdown over the coronavirus, which I do believe is beyond reason. But first, we have to ask Tom Benson, who's in the control room, how he's doing tonight.
I'm doing just fine, thank you. And that was quite a fizzle of a storm over the weekend, huh? On Sunday?
Nobody even cares about that anymore. Well, I
Well-
guess they care about it up north.
I was just going to say, it was pretty rough in areas up north. A lot of flooding in Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, Jersey, yeah.
Yeah, I had a friend over the weekend who posted a picture at the gas station and noticed that nobody was getting gas. Usually before a hurricane, there's like lines of people scared.
And bread was available at the grocery store. Huh?
Yeah, and it's because they knew this is just a Cat 1 and 4. You're like, oh, who cares?
Either that or we still have stockpiles from March. Yeah.
Yeah. Although gas prices last week went up by 15 to 20 cents, like randomly. Nobody knows why.
Well, because they can. That's why.
I wonder if it is because of the storm, that they felt like they could raise it because of the storm and there would be more people, even though it didn't happen. But literally, like, you read the reports and they're like, we don't really know why. Oil prices are still really low.
Well, if they went up last week, it's because they needed to make their budget for the month of July. So raise the prices,
I guess. It's just, it's an interesting thing there. So I want to start with something that I posted earlier this week on Facebook that got a lot of attention. Of course, from my trolls as well. You like it when the trolls comment. And, of course, some of the people that commented just went totally off topic, which, this is what social media does to us. But it made me think about the fact that politics dominates everything in our lives. Sports, movies, church, anything. It dominates church now. It's just your family get-togethers, I think. Get-togethers with your friends. Music.
Yeah.
Everything.
Don't talk Trump with weird Uncle Harold.
Exactly. When social media, when Facebook first came out and MySpace came out, the whole point of it was just to say, this is what I had for lunch today. And people were like, whoa, this is cool. I get to know what you do every day. And now I go on social media and it's all Trump said this, or yay, Trump. And it's just, it dominates. And it fascinates me because, like I mentioned, 5-10 years ago, I started getting into politics and news and stuff, and none of my friends were into it. Part of that was because I was young. I was in my early 20s when I really started getting into this. And a lot of people in their early 20s, I guess, at that time were not. But it seems like everybody, no matter what you turn into, and it's annoying. But I've been reading this book lately on, it's called The Iron Curtain. It's on the Soviet Union after World War II and how it took over the Eastern Bloc states in Europe, Eastern Europe. And one thing that was fascinating to me about what happened in those countries after World War II is the Soviet Union made sure that politics, that the communist agenda, the political ideology was pushed in everything in life. Everything in life had to somehow promote the communist agenda. And it wasn't just in politics or economics. It was everything. Youth organizations, they would talk to the youth leaders. What are you doing to promote the communist agenda? Music, art. There was something called Stalinist realism or something like that. And
that sounds interesting.
Yeah, I know. It's just exactly. Yawn fest. And what's funny is originally the Soviet Union and a lot of these communist leaders in the states after World War II, they just believed that communists would be elected. So they had full confidence that the communist Soviet leaders would just be elected in the elections and they wouldn't have to do too much. And then that didn't happen because, communism sucks. So that didn't happen. And they're like, well, what do we have to do? So the state started taking more and more control, and they pushed it in everything, every aspect of life, to your clothes. Even clothing had to somehow push the communist agenda. And I started thinking about that, and I'm like, that is so much where we are right now in the country, it seems like. And by the way, if you were in the Soviet Union states and you did not push the communist agenda, if you tried to stay out of politics, well, then you were blasted as a capitalist sympathizer.
And you went to Siberia.
You went to one of the gulags or something. If you're in any kind of leadership position and you refused to get into politics, they took that as a political stance, and then you were sent to the gulag or something, because everything had to promote it. And what's interesting is I'm seeing some of my friends on the left in social media start to go down that road where they say, if you're silent on these issues, if you're not talking about these issues, if you're not into these political issues, that's worse. That's just as bad as being wrong because you're not fighting for justice and all of that. I'm like, it's amazing how these things are similar. The only difference is it's scary because it's like what's happening here in the U.S. It's really reading that book. I'm like, wow, this is like the same thing that's happening here. The radical left in this country has tried, and it's all done on purpose. They want to infiltrate everything in our culture and make sure those things push the leftist agenda, which is pretty close to communist agenda. I mean, it's pretty similar. They want to promote that totally. And the only difference is, instead of it being done from the top down by a gun, by the state, they tried that, it didn't really work. They decided that we're going to infiltrate every other aspect of things. We're going to go in academia. We're going to go into movies. We're going to go into sports. We're going to go into art. And we're going to use that. And at first they thought, well, we'll just win elections and people will just like what we say and they'll follow us. Well, that didn't work. Trump got elected. I mean, that's a big reason there. And they're like, oh, this didn't work. So now they're trying to shove it down our throats. In every aspect of our lives, they're trying to shove it down our throats. And it's almost worse than what happened in the Soviet Union. I mean, not really, because if you go against it, you're not thrown in a gulag. Okay, you're not shot in the street or something. But it's almost more effective because you can't just like elect a new leader or have like a political revolution. It's all encompassing in our culture. And the purpose of it is to get you on board. Not even just to shut you up, but to make sure what you're saying agrees with our agenda. And it's scary. And the only good news I can give you as a response to all of this is eventually the Soviet Union collapsed. Eventually, as much as the Soviet Union tried for years and years and years to push their agenda, there were always pockets of resistance in little different ways because people, they're just not going to put up with it forever. They're not going to continue to put up with this nonsense forever. And that's the good news I see here when it comes to what's going on in this country right now. The good news is I'm noticing eventually people are just not going to put up with this nonsense anymore. They're not going to put up with the politics, the leftist politics, and every aspect of our life being shoved down our throats. Eventually, there will be some kind of backlash. Hopefully, it doesn't take like 80 years like it did for the Soviet Union to crumble.
Well, I was going to say, we talked about this a little bit last week, where a lot of Republican, political people in the Republican Party and those who support Trump are silent now because they're afraid of, being harassed and being on the wrong side of the issue.
Exactly.
But come November, hopefully they'll turn out anyway.
Yeah.
And all those polls will be wrong again.
But elections are not enough. You're exactly right. That's a big reason why Trump won. It's a big middle finger to that leftist ideology being pushed on us.
And then they started the resistance on Inauguration Day.
No, the resistance.
Yes,
notice that.
Yes.
It's got to be pushed everywhere. But the backlash is going to come in our culture. It's going to be beyond politics, and it has to be beyond politics. And that brings me back to Isaac, the Magic player. I think this is a sign of that in a way, and there are more signs of this, and we have to talk about it next. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
If you miss any of the show, you can download the Beyond Reason podcast on iTunes. This is Orlando's Smart Talk Radio. Beyond Reason Radio continues now.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. This is Beyond Reason Radio. We're discussing the fact that it seems like politics has dominated everything in our culture. It's beyond just news. It's beyond just reading the political articles. It's everywhere. It dominates
beyond
everything.
reason.
It really is. And another reason I did want to point out that I believe that politics dominates everything is because the government's so huge. I mean, think about it. If the federal government is so big, it affects so much of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to escape it. When the government just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, of course we're going to all fight about it because it affects our daily lives. And, of course, that's going to continue even more, and they want the government to affect more of our lives. So instead of thinking about healthcare and, how do we, help fix the healthcare system, or if you have a healthcare problem, we go from a hospital can look at it individually, and how can we make things better for our patients, and what can we do in this state versus that state? No, they want it to be a national thing. So if they get their way and we have nationalized healthcare, then that it already is an issue, but it'll be another issue that we have to fight about politically because it's just the government's huge. But a lot of it is because they've pushed it. It's all on purpose. The people on the radical left pushed this because they wanted it all in our culture. But there is a pushback to some of this. Now, when I posted this on Facebook, someone commented and said, BLM movement isn't just political ideology or propaganda. It's just about people being decent humans. Black Lives Matter. It's just about us being decent to one another. Yeah, you're very ignorant about the BLM movement if you think it's just about people being decent with one another. When you listen to the leadership, if you listen to Kaepernick, they're making political statements. When you decide to kneel for the flag, you're making a political statement, and they're pushing political fixes to the problems.
And it's a catchy slogan that you can't push back on.
Yeah, I talked about that before. You don't believe Black Lives Matter? And that's an interesting way to put it because NBA player Jonathan Isaac of the Orlando Magic, yay, go Magic, he decided not to kneel. Now, he got injured, unfortunately. He might be out for the rest of the season.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Really bad injury. And, of course, some people on Twitter on the left blasted him and said it's karma. Don't worry, Jonathan. God is with you. Persecution happens when you're a Christian. But stand firm because God is with you. But he brought this up because somebody asked him in the press conference afterwards, well, do you believe Black Lives Matter? Kind of like what you just said. Here is his response.
Absolutely. I believe that Black Lives Matter. A lot went into my decision, and part of it is, first off, is my thought that, kneeling or wearing a Black Lives Matter t-shirt don't go hand in hand with supporting Black lives. And so I felt like, just me personally, and what it is that I believe in, standing on the stance that I do believe that Black Lives Matter, but I just felt like it was the decision that I had to make, and I didn't feel like putting that shirt on and kneeling went hand in hand with supporting Black lives.
That's a great response. And he didn't say this, but I have a feeling he knows what the organization is really all about.
Sure.
He's looked into it and doesn't like it, and that's a big reason why he decided not to do this. He's like, look, of course Black Lives Matter, all lives matter, but I'm not going to support this agenda of this movement, of this ideology, of this organization, because it goes against my Christian faith. We've heard other prominent blacks in sports media and other places say basically the same thing, which is good. They're pushing back against this nonsense. But he continues on here when asked, why he decided not to kneel.
It made me support Black Lives or not. I believe that for myself, my life has been supported through the gospel of Jesus Christ, and that everyone is made in the image of God, and that we all fall short of God's glory, and that each and every one of us, each and every day, do things that we shouldn't do. We say things that we shouldn't say. We hate and we dislike people that we shouldn't hate and dislike. And sometimes it gets into a point where we point fingers about whose evil is worse. And sometimes that comes down to simply whose evil is most visible. So I felt like I wanted to just take a stand on it. I feel like we all make mistakes, but I think that the gospel of Jesus Christ is that there's grace for us, and that Jesus came and died for our sins, and that if we all will come to an understanding of that and understand that God wants to have a relationship with us, that we can get past skin color, we can get past all the things in our world that are messed up, jacked up. I think when you look around, racism isn't the only thing that plagues our society, that plagues our nation, that plagues our world. And I feel like, coming together on that message that we want to get past not only racism, but everything that plagues us as a society. I feel like the answer to it is the gospel.
I think he's exactly right. He basically is making the point that actor Terry Crews was making when he was pushing back against some of the Black Lives Matter movement. Except he straight up is promoting the gospel, and he's exactly right. He should promote the gospel of Jesus Christ, because that really is the answer, because sin is the problem. We are all sinners, and we all need grace, and that's his point. But also, Terry Crews noticed that what was going on in the Black Lives Matter movement wasn't just standing up against police brutality. It was a movement to say not only Black Lives Matter, but Black Lives Better. And the movement seemed to be about not only, like I said, going against police brutality and standing up against racism, but talking about how evil the country is by going against whites, by constantly pointing fingers. And Terry Crews says, I don't want to just have a country where we constantly hate each other and point fingers.
Pushing down others to make yourself look good.
Pushing down others to make yourself look good. And Terry Crews said, I don't want to be about that. I want to stand up against police brutality like anyone else. I believe Black Lives Matter, but I believe the best way to move forward is if we all come together and focus on the individual and focus on character. I have a feeling that's where Jonathan Isaac is coming from as well, and he's exactly right. If we go towards the narrative of Black Lives Matter, we're not going to move in the right direction. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Listen to the latest episodes of Beyond Reason. Download the podcast at Spreaker.com. The place where we talk faith, culture, and politics. Beyond Reason Radio continues.
Yes, don't forget, if you miss any of the show, by the way, you can catch the podcast on the iHeartRadio app or anywhere podcasts are available. Always post it right after the show. You can also follow me on Twitter at Michael Yaffee. I post the podcast there, but I post other stuff as well all the time. For some reason, I decide to jump in the cesspool that is Twitter every now and then. You know, yeah. I need a good shower afterward.
That's about it. You can only take enough of that, and then.
And you know, one of the biggest criticisms I get from people on my side, not the trolls, the leftist trolls, but people on my side, they really think I'm too hard on President Trump. You know, anytime I criticize Trump, it's I have Trump derangement syndrome. I'm not a real conservative. Blah 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 blah. Apparently now, if you don't support everything Trump does, that means you're not a conservative. I mean, one guy even said I should be canceled from WFLA. Basically, I thought cancel culture was something the left did.
Apparently, he didn't get copied on the talking points this week, did he?
I guess not. So. But I will say this. I want Trump to win. I voted for Trump last time. I didn't vote for him in the primary, but I did vote for him in the election. He was the best option, and I'm going to vote for him this time. But I think there's some things he needs to do if he wants to win. Now, everyone has different ideas, and he's president, and I'm not, so maybe my words are not worth anything to anyone. But these are just some things I want to throw out for your consideration. One thing he should do is continue to promote his record, because he has accomplished a lot of good things, but I think they get lost in the noise. Now, a lot of that's the media's fault, of course. I get it. But, I mean, I think he can also promote it a little bit better. But someone who did promote it over the weekend was Hugh Hewitt, conservative talk radio host. He has a column in the Washington Post. And, you know, Hugh Hewitt's not a big Trumper. I mean, there's no way. The guy's probably pretty moderate. I like him. He seems like a nice guy. But he wrote an article in the Washington Post that says, the case for Trump will come down to his record. It's a strong one. And he says, President Trump's record of accomplishments is easy to compile. Most significantly, he has brought the existential threat posed by the Chinese Communist Party into the sunlight. Trump is, you know, the light is on what they're doing, and that's a lot of Trump. He also talks about the judges because of him and Mitch McConnell, a lot of good conservative judges. The tax cuts are good. The massive deregulation was that's specifically Trump who did a lot of that. He did that he was able to do some of that without Congress. Mm-hmm. So that's a good thing. He took the military and made it a lot better, which it needed because it was cut under Obama. That's a good thing. He tore up the Iran nuclear deal. He moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. He took us out of the Paris Climate Accords. This is a good one. This is one that I like as well. He ordered Iran's master terrorist, General Qasem Soleimani, killed, accomplished complete physical destruction of the Islamic State Caliphate, and successfully hunted down its terrorist chieftain, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. I mean, that right there, that doesn't get nearly enough attention.
Who can argue that?
But yeah, it's good stuff. I mean, if it was Democrat, a lot of this stuff would not have happened. The only thing I disagree with is he talks about the long overdue justice reform. I think a lot of that criminal justice reform, we're gonna regret it. I still believe that. Mm-hmm. Reorganization of Veterans Affairs, that's good. I mean, so Trump has done a lot of good things. He has a pretty good record and he needs to promote it. That's one way that he could win. Another way he could win, and I've said this for a while now, is he needs to promote the fact that it's good to love America. It's good to love your country. It's good to be patriotic. Stand up for those who are patriotic because, frankly, in our culture right now, we talked about this in the last half hour, but frankly, in our culture right now, it's popular not to be patriotic. It's popular to fall in line that America is actually evil and racist, and why aren't we more like Europe and yada, 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 and all these bad things we did in the past. And actually, the Trump White House put out a really good video. It's basically an ad for his reelection, but it's a really good video. And you can find it on Twitter. I'll retweet it in a moment. And you can follow me on Twitter at Michael Yaffee. The video is much better than the audio, but the audio is good. Just listen to this. If he could do more stuff like this and put this out there, I think it would be really effective because I think there are a lot of Americans that want to feel good about their country again. And there's so much of the other side that makes them feel like, no, they can't. But here it is. Here's the ad.
The more that a broken system tells you that you're wrong, the more certain you should be that you must keep pushing ahead. Because it's the outsiders who change the world and who make a real and lasting difference. Nothing worth doing ever came easy. Treat the word impossible as nothing more than motivation. The future belongs to the people who follow their heart no matter what the critics say. We must always remember that we share one home and one glorious destiny. We all bleed the same red blood of patriots. We all salute the same great American flag. Our best days are yet to come.
Honestly, if you actually go and watch the video, it's hard not to get chills because it's very good.
I wonder if they bought the Portland market.
Yeah, I doubt it. Though there's riots, people throwing their TVs out the window or something. The violence. Can't love America? No. So that's really good. And a lot of people, when I say stuff like this, they think, well, you're just a pansy. You're just, you're mamby-pamby. You're not willing to fight the left. And Trump's willing to fight the left. And I'm saying I'm totally willing to fight the left. I do it all the time on this show. And I want Trump to fight the left. But I just want him to do it in a smart way. And I played this cut, I believe, last week. But I want to play it again because when I think of a smart way to fight the left, I think of Dan Crenshaw, Texas conservative Republican representative. He was on Fox News, and he was talking about why we need to listen to the left because we need to listen to actually how dangerous they are and why we should vote for Trump and why we should believe in this country. And people are desperate to believe in this country. This is exactly the approach the Trump campaign should take. Here it is.
I think a lot is at stake, okay? And my suggestion to the American people is start listening to Democrats. We have to listen to what they're telling us. They talk about defunding the police. They talk about making excuses for violent mobs. Let's take them at their word. They want to destroy the things that bring us together, our common bonds, our founding, our love of country. And why did they do that? Why did they say those things? Because fundamentally they want to dismantle our country and its institutions. That's not my words, that's their words. Dismantle our economic freedom, our border security, our energy sector, all of it. Now, I don't think most Americans want that. I think we want a renewed sense of faith in the country. I think we want to have our kids love our country again. I think we want to restore of faith in our police forces, restore safety in our communities, and we want to rebuild our economy. Okay, we have the greatest economy that our country has ever known. We want to rebuild that. We want to rebuild our infrastructure along with it. So you're seeing a very clear choice in 2020. It's chaos versus safety and security. It's socialism and doubling your tax rates versus economic freedom. It's government takeover of your health care versus keeping the doctor that you trust. It's acquiescence to China versus holding China accountable. These are important themes, and the difference could not be more severe. This is not President Obama's Democrat Party, and people need to realize that.
The only disagreement I have with them is I think it is kind of Obama's party. A lot of this started with Obama, but that's how you fight the left. He's exactly right. People want to believe in this country again. They want to be proud of America again, and the left doesn't want you to be. But he goes after everything that they do and how destructive it is. So you can fight the left. You just got to do it in a smart way. So we're going over some things that Trump needs to do to win. But I want to say one thing that Trump should not do. I think Trump should stop doing some of these interviews, these one-on-one interviews, because it's just not making him look good because he just can't rise above the petty squabbles. He has such a hard time, and the average person, especially the average Christian, feels like he just has no ability to show some humility and respect for others if that person might have disagreed with him once. And it just makes him look petty. And because this stuff happens, it gets so much attention and it blocks out any of the positives. Now, the cut that you were starting to play before, I want to play that one next, the Trump 2 cut, because this is Trump talking with Jonathan Swan of Axios. They did a full-ranging interview, and Trump's getting blasted for it. Yeah, Trump won. I'm sorry. And here, Jonathan asks him about the death of John Lewis and his legacy. And this should be an easy answer for Trump. This is not a gotcha question. But Trump just screws it up because he can't get over anything that made him look bad. He can't get over it. He can't rise above it. He can't move past it. And this is not what you should do if you want to win in November. Here it is.
John Lewis is lying in state in the U.S. Capitol. How do you think history will remember John Lewis?
I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know. I don't know John Lewis. He chose not to come to my inauguration. He chose. I never met John Lewis. Actually, I don't believe.
Do you find him impressive?
I can't say one way or the other. I find a lot of people impressive. I find many people not impressive. But no. But I didn't.
Do you find his story impressive?
He didn't come to my inauguration. He didn't come to my State of the Union speeches, and that's okay. That's his right. And again, nobody has done more for black Americans than I have.
I understand.
He should have come. I think he made a big mistake.
But taking your relation.
I mean, obviously, when you're talking about John Lewis, you're talking about his legacy in the fight for civil rights, which is a good thing and should be praised. And it's not a hard question. That was not a difficult question. But Trump can't get over it. Well, he didn't come to my inauguration, so I'm offended. And he disagreed with me on politics, so I can't praise him at all, even though the guy is dead. He made it about himself, and Trump constantly does this. And it's not, if he wants to win, he has to move past this. Maybe it's too late for him to move past this stuff. I know, but it distracts from everything good that I just mentioned. I mentioned all these good things about the Trump campaign, about Trump and what he's done, and people don't know about it because he constantly gets caught up in all this stuff. And I think he likes to get caught up in it because he promotes it on Twitter. But that's what he should do and should not do, in my opinion, if he wants to win. Now, Trump was exactly right on something he said yesterday when it comes to coronavirus. We have to talk about that next and much more. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I am your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Download the iHeartRadio app and catch the Beyond Reason Radio podcast. Your voice of truth in a world of fake news. Beyond Reason Radio continues right now.
Yes, welcome back to the show. I just have to say, I can't believe we're still having this debate on whether we need to shut down again. Like, this is still a thing that is going on out there, that there are some who are calling for another shutdown. Now, I know, Tom Benson, you believe that all of that will end after Biden's elected in November.
November 4th, they'll say, what shutdown? What do you mean? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Christmas is coming. We got to get out.
Yeah, exactly right. But, I mean, it just amazes me that we're still having this debate because we did it. We tried that. We did it for how long? 2 months?
Yeah. Look where it got us.
And it didn't work. It didn't stop it. It gave us some time, and that's good, I guess, but it didn't work. Complete shutdowns, and we're going to do it again. But there are doctors who actually want to do this again. Now, I heard this on the Fox News Rundown podcast, and I just had to play some of it. I guess there was a letter. I think I read part of it on one of the shows. But one of the signers of a letter saying we need to shut down again, his name is Dr. Seth Truger. And he talked about it on this podcast. And I want to play for you what he said, because he talks about the shutdowns here and of course, why we must do it again. Here it is.
Shutdowns at first, the whole idea was, to flatten the curve. This got a lot of, I think, national attention, and it was a bit intuitive that, if too many people get sick at once, the health systems are going to get overwhelmed, and we'd end up with, situations where people wouldn't be able to get care they need, and there'd be a huge amount of unnecessary deaths. What was supposed to happen was that we flatten the curve and buy ourselves a lot of time to do things like build up testing capacity, build up our ability to make PPE, work on medications like therapeutics and vaccines, build test and trace capacity, public health capacity. And unfortunately, it seems like we just squandered that entire opportunity.
What are you talking about, that we squandered the entire opportunity? I don't understand. I don't get it. How did we squander it? We have way more treatments than we did a few months ago. We have way more PPE than we did a few months ago. We have way more testing and contact tracing than we did a few months ago. So how in the world can you say that we squandered it? I mean, just look at the state of Florida right now. We had all of those tests, positive tests, and yet the deaths weren't even as close as what it was in New York. Maybe that's because we did not squander it and we actually prepared and we developed treatments. I mean, come on. It's just not factually correct. They're trying to make it seem like doom gloom. We're back to where we started, and that's just not true. Maybe it's just a virus, and you can't control a virus as much as you want to. You just can't, without just destroying lives by destroying the economy. Now, he talks about here, what about he's asked, what about the economy? What wanted to destroy the economy, to shut down again? Here's his response.
The reason the economy is doing badly now is because people can't participate in the economy because there's a pandemic. The traditional things we do to fix the economy are basically, the way I see it, it's like mopping up blood off the floor without fixing the bleeding wound. What we need to do is to get the pandemic under control. There's no way to fix the economy unless it's safe for people to go to work, it's safe for people to go to stores, it's safe for people to participate in the economy. And none of that's going to happen unless the pandemic's under control.
I mean, he's right that, yes, we're not going to be able to completely fix everything until there's like a vaccine. By the way, that's the only way you can control it, is a vaccine. All these other steps, they didn't work. The only way you can control it is a vaccine, unless you shut down until there's a vaccine. But to act like, Oh, well, the only reason we saw just horrid economic numbers is because of the pandemic. That the shutdowns really, that wasn't the responsible. It's absurd. Of course, the shutdowns made it 50 times worse. And we all know it. We all know it. It's just common sense. One person who was exactly right on this was President Trump, believe it or not. Yesterday, when he did a press conference on this, he said exactly why just doing these shutdowns is not a good idea. He's right. Here it is.
It's important for all Americans to recognize that a permanent lockdown is not a viable path toward producing the result that you want, or certainly not a viable path forward, and would ultimately inflict more harm than it would prevent. As we're seeing in foreign countries around the world where cases are once again surging, you have many places where we thought they were under control and doing a great job, and they are doing a great job, but this is a very tough, invisible enemy. Lockdowns do not prevent infection in the future. They just don't. It comes back, many times comes back. The purpose of a lockdown is to buy time to build capacity, especially with respect to hospitals, learn more about the disease and develop effective treatments as we did in the United States. We're doing very well with the vaccines and the therapeutics.
I mean, he is 100% right there. Everything he said is correct. The reason why we can't lock down again is because shutdowns don't work. Because what happens is right after the shutdowns, it spreads again. And people say, well, we need more contact tracing. You can't have enough contact tracing if so many people are getting this that are asymptomatic. If this is spreading, because apparently, this is what they're telling me, is that people are getting it that are asymptomatic. So if that's the case, you're never going to be able to control it the way you want until there's a vaccine. It will always spread again after the shutdown. But he also said exactly why we shut down in the first place was to prepare, which we did. We have much more effective treatments. We all know this. We have much more testing. We all know this. Some hospitals are struggling. I'm not going to deny that. But we're not at the point where they're just totally overwhelmed and they can't handle it. That's just not true. It's not factually correct. So much of this is just fear-mongering. It is Beyond Reason. If you miss any of the show, it'd be Beyond Reason not to catch it on the iHeartRadio app. The podcast will be available later tonight and tomorrow. Make sure to share with your friends as well. Follow me on Twitter and Facebook, and I will be back tomorrow at the same time. See you then.